Hi, it's Nick from UK Gardening. We're getting towards the end of October now and the nights are drawing in. It's starting to get cold overnight. This morning we actually had a ground frost, so it's time to protect the tender perennials and bring them in under cover. It's not actually the cold that kills a lot of the tender plants, it's actually the cold and the wet. So if you leave the plants out, they will actually get wet, and then the ground tends to freeze, and that's what actually kills them. I'm going to just show you how I store my geraniums or pelargoniums. They will actually tolerate quite cold temperatures down to -5, -10 degrees. And there's a number of ways of actually storing them over winter, depending on what facilities you have. I'm fortunate enough to have a greenhouse, but you can actually store them in the shed, loft or spare bedroom. We've got a number of geraniums, pelargoniums left over from the summer fair that we were selling plants at. So I'm going to try and save quite a few of them, because we're going to do the summer fair, or maybe even the spring fair next year. I've got quite a large greenhouse, so I'm actually going to save these in their pots. These are mainly zonal geraniums, zonal pelargoniums. There are some ivy leaf pelargoniums here, but storing them is pretty much the same. These will continue growing all year round. If you're going to store them in a greenhouse or in a shed, what you actually want to do is stop the growth. But if you don't have those facilities, you can keep them indoors and just grow them as a house plant, and then in the spring you can actually just cut them up, cut the main stems up, take cuttings, and actually just increase your number of plants that way. Get rid of all the old leaves and all the dead bits, and perhaps a few of the crossing leaves, because they're just going to get in the way. So any of this discoloured leaves and any of the dead flower heads, chuck those away. And that'll be very happy indoors all through the winter. Water it sparingly, it doesn't need to be watered very much, because whilst it's still warm indoors, it won't actually, because of its low light levels, it probably won't grow terribly big. But yeah, get a saucer for that, put it indoors, and that'll survive the winter very successfully. It might just be worth knocking out the pot, just to make sure you haven't got any wood lice or slugs or anything like that that might attack the plant. That's a wood lice, but otherwise it's quite a nice healthy plant. The second method is a bit more drastic, and it involves your secateurs, because we're actually going to prepare them for winter. Now, there's two important things with these secateurs. The first is make sure they're sharp. The last thing you want to do is introduce infection. So this is a oil stone or wet stone. I have actually oiled it, so I'm just going to sharpen my secateur blade up. Give it a good run over with a wet stone, oil stone, and then perhaps more importantly is actually to disinfect it, or in this case I'm going to use some methylated spirits to sterilise the blade. When you're actually storing these plants over winter, the worst thing affecting them is actually grey mould in the greenhouse. It's caused by the cold, damp air, so you want to avoid that at all costs. So sterilise the equipment and sterilise your secateurs. We're going to do the same thing. First, we're going to get rid of all the dead material. And now we're going to remove a lot of this growth. So just cut, and you're going to leave it to about 10 centimetres. Cut most of this off. I'm going to remove that as well. That would be lovely cutting in the summer, but we don't want this green. We want to get rid of almost all the leaves. We're going to pretty much put it into hibernation mode. In the greenhouse it's not going to have any moisture. We're going to keep it very dry. Yeah, as I say, not water it at all. And then in the spring, when it first starts to show signs of growth, either on the root or on the stem, then we'll start watering it, and that will probably be in March, April time. In the greenhouse they'll be protected, and then they can come back outside in May time. So that's a zonal geranium or pelargonium. The other important thing to do is actually label it. If you're going to go for a colour scheme, you want to make sure you label the colour. That was a white one, because there's nothing worse than if you're putting that up into a hanging basket of all white plants and it comes out red. It's going to be a bit of a clash of colours. So I'm just going to put white on that. And that'll go in the greenhouse. Or conservatory or porch. As long as it's protected from the worst of the frost, it will survive. This is an ivy leaf pelargonium, or trailing geranium, trailing pelargonium. And I'm going to do the same thing to that. I'm going to get rid of a lot of these dead leaves. And it does look quite drastic, but as I say, you're trying to make them survive the worst of the winter. And what will actually happen if you don't cut these off is they will die back, which will encourage mould to form. So I'm just cutting those without cutting my fingers. So again, you're left with a mineral plant. And I'll just take a few more of those leaves off. Not all the plants will survive. You will lose some of them, but most of them will survive if the weather doesn't get too much or too cold. I'm just going to take that out of there. I'm going to knock that out of there again, just to check. You can see the nice healthy roots, but on the bottom there there's a spider's web. I'll just get rid of that. Normally I let the spiders live, but I'm not quite sure if it's a red spider mite, so I just want to get rid of it. So that's an ivy leaf pelargonium. That's called tornado white, so I'll keep that in there. That'll give me a clue to what colour it is when I'm planting baskets up. And I might just do one of these. These are a lot smaller. You can see that I've not been watering them. They are very dry already. And I will just above a node if you can. A node is just where the leaf comes out. And that was I don't call it a variegated. I don't know if it is actually a variegated, but it's a particular type of zonal pelargonium. And again, just write down the flower colour. That's how I do it if you're going to keep them in pots, and if you've got plenty of room or you haven't got many geraniums that you want to sow. But most people will have geraniums in baskets, containers, or actually in the border themselves. So here, what I actually want to do is lift them. So this, just dig around the roots. Once that's out, let's get rid of the basket. You have various different options here. The first thing what I'll do is take off any of the dead leaves, remove the flowers, because it'll just be putting energy into those remove those. Now you can do a number of things with this. But the first is you could do what the Victorians used to do. You just get some newspaper. Might be better off with some bigger sheets of newspaper if you have them. Just wrap it up like a bunch of flowers. And put it in a dark place in a shed, in the loft, or under the bed in the spare bedroom. Not all the plants will survive, but those that do survive you can obviously take cuttings from in the spring. I forgot to say that when you're wrapping them up in newspaper, if you get a pen and just write again, what colour it is, for the same reason. And if you get plant tags with little holes in there at the end, then what you can actually do is, if you get a little bit of wire or a little bit of string, you can actually just wire that on to the plant like that. The other method you can do is get the plant, knock a lot of the soil off, and actually you can just put some wire through there and actually just hang that up in the shed or actually in the loft. It will dry out, and it may need a misting with water every month or so, and then again you can take it, pot it up, and actually take cuttings from it late spring, early summer, softwood cuttings. And then the last method is, if you don't have a lot of space but you have quite a lot of geraniums that you want to save, do the similar thing to what I did in the pot. But so we want to just sterilise the secateurs again. Cut it back to a node about 10 centimetres, I think that's about 4 inches. And get a large pot of dry compost. This is dry compost that I've had in the greenhouse, and actually just put all of the plants together. So that was a pink one, so I'll put that, this is red, I think, yeah, that's red, so knock that out of the pot. So as I say, this is if you've got limited storage. I'm just going to get those wood lights out of there, because I don't want them shake off a lot of the dirt. And then I'll pop those in the greenhouse, as I've said before, with minimal water. I mean, if they're looking really dishevelled and really they're looking really unhealthy, then perhaps give them a spray with water. But try and do it in the morning so that they've got a chance to dry out. Once you've got that filled up, if you then just cover the roots with some more of the dry compost, again, don't water it. Pop that in the greenhouse, and they should survive the winter. That's about it. If you've got any questions, please post them below. Thanks, bye.